You started as a Navy radar operator.
No, sonar.
Sonar, my bad. Okay.
Way more dependent upon sound.
Yes.
When I joined the Navy in 1960, the Navy, it was right in the middle of the Cold War, and their main thing was to find Russian submarines. That was the main, that was top of the line order. So it was mandatory. Everybody that went to basic training took an audiometer test, and the top 5% in pitch perception were sent to sonar school regardless of whether you wanted to or not.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's all based on deciphering tones.
Yes.
You send out a 1,000 cycle tone, and the echo you get back, flat, sharp.
Mm-hmm.
Is it moving forward or backwards from you?
Interesting.
And it was like, you're going to sonar school. Great. What's that? One of those deals, right?
And you said you were in sonar school for a year, correct?
It was 2 6-month periods. Yeah, the first 6 months was basic sonar. The first day they showed a battery. Electricity goes from positive to negative. Next. And then by the end of the 6 months, we're fixing a computer that take up this whole room in 1960. It was all vacuum tubes, and it was huge. It had like 3 rooms on the ship that were part of this computer to look for submarines and to fire this rocket at them.
Wild.
Yeah.
So you were in the Navy from 1960
60 to 64.
To 64.
Right.
And then 64, you decided to head to New York?
Yes, I'd taken some courses in radio and television production. And I was going to go to New York, and I'd already been accepted at NYU and New York Institute of Technology. But I couldn't start. I got out of the Navy in February of 64, and I couldn't start school till the fall. So that's when I got the temporary job at Dick Charles. Okay. 2 mono machines and a cloud of dust.
Okay. And how long were sessions typically at Dick Charles?
They could be as short as 15 minutes.
Okay.
And as long as like 2 hours, maybe.
Okay.
2-3 hours.
But the big thing is you were working on multiple projects a day.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
they would be in and out, in and out, in and out. The songwriters, it was mostly just songwriter demos. And they'd come in and knock it out. Sometimes a piano voice would be 15 minutes. If they had like a 4-piece band, it could be an hour. And usually they were just working on one song, the song that they finished that morning, or something like that.
Yep.
And then they would immediately send the tape to the cutting room, which is right across the other side of the office. And Gary Kellgren and I would cut 15 acetates. So that was the way they would get the song out to producers and artists and things like that.
Okay.
So they'd come in and do the demo, and then they'd want 15, 20 acetates or whatever. And that was the MO during the day.
Did you only have the ability to cut a single disc at a time, or could you cut?
No, we had two lays.
Okay, 2 lays.
We could do 2 at a time.
Okay, so 7 passes. So some sessions, you spent more time cutting the acetates than you did.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, very interesting. And was that one of those things where you'd be in the control room engineering and Gary would be over there cutting acetates from the previous session, or?
Usually, well, most of my time there, I was in the cutting room.
Okay.
Most of the time, I would, like I said before, I would only get like piano voice demo, guitar voice demo. I didn't do any. I did maybe at most 3-piece sessions before, the most I'd done at Dick Charles. And then when I went to Regent, it was a 4-track studio, and Bob Lifton was my boss, and he taught me how to engineer big dates.
Okay, so, going back to the cutting room, I've always found one thing about, the way EMI did their business very interesting, is that when you became an engineer, that was their first spot along the way, was that you learned how to cut a disc so you knew exactly how much bass that you could put on it.
Right.
Do you feel like that was very helpful?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'd ruin it. As a newbie, you'd ruin a few discs.
Yep.
Too close together, not loud enough, not soft enough, whatever. And it was, yeah.
And so in your first room there, do you remember the tools that you had to go to battle? Did you have an equalizer and a limiter, or were you pretty much just pushing the level up?
No, it was straight.
Okay.
There was no messing around from the tape to the lathe. It wasn't mastering per se.
Yep.
It was whatever the engineer made in the studio, that's what it is.
Okay, and were you cutting to a Scully or a Neumann?
No, 2 Neumanns.
Okay.
2 Neumann lathes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. So after, Dick Charles, you move over to Regent Sound
Regent.
and you met a mentor there,
Yeah, Bob Lifton.
Bob Lifton.
Bob Lifton taught me more about engineering in the first year than I could. It was like overload. He taught me so much.
Okay. And then,
And by the end of that year, I was doing dates with 30 people.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
So,
on 4-track.
and for everybody out at home, that's 30 people live in the room.
In the room, all
Yep.
at the same time. You could have full rhythm section, 4, 5 horns, 10 strings, background singers, lead vocal.
And so, in a situation like that at Regent, how big was the console to take in, all of those people and then mix
I
them?
think it had 15 inputs.
15 inputs. Okay, so you were still using a lot of single mics on sources.
Oh yeah, and 2 mics on a whole big string section.
Yep.
That's about all you could afford.
Absolutely. Were they great microphones back then,
Oh
Neumann's?
yeah,
Yep.
yep. There were a lot of Neumanns. The early versions like not the 47s and what was the fat one?
The FET 47?
Yeah,
Yep.
that. And the 67s with an outside power supply and all that.
Do you remember using a lot of small diaphragm condenser microphones?
Not very many.
Okay, so
Yeah,
a lot
there's
of.
a lot of dynamic mics.
Okay, awesome. And if you had to, remember up something that Gary taught you, what stuck with you the most from that time period?
But it was Bob.
Oh, Bob, sorry.
Yeah, Bob
Yep.
Lifton. Speed,
Speed.
union dates.
Okay.
If it's a 10 to 1, at 10 you're going to get a downbeat. And if you're not ready, you're costing everybody money.
Okay. And at Regent, did they have a house kit and a house,
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah, I could pre-mic that. Yeah.
Yep. So for the most part, people were just bringing in their instruments, plugging
Right.
it into the amplifiers that were
Right.
there, and going.
Exactly.
Okay. And how much time was allotted on the books for transitions between sessions?
An hour.
An hour.
Yeah.
Okay. So they did give you a little bit of time. But
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're going from a 4-piece rhythm section to 20-piece date, you better get your ass moving.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, you had a lot of work and you did it by yourself. I mean, very seldom would there be 2 people setting up a date. It was whoever the engineer was booked. That was your responsibility. Set it up.
Okay.
Chairs and everything.
And, did they typically, book the engineers for the whole day so that you'd be dealing with everything that was coming in that day?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Unless somebody had a favorite, a client had a favorite, and it wasn't the guy that was working. There were 3 of us there at Regent. There were 2 studios and 3 engineers, 2 studios and a cutting room.
Okay. Amazing.
Yeah.
So you're at Regent. How long do you stay at Regent?
End of 64 to 68, about 3.5, 4 years.
Okay. And then from there, you moved to the Hit Factory,
Hit
correct?
Factory, yeah. One of my clients at Regent was Jerry Ragavoy, songwriter and producer. And he really liked my work a lot. And he said, I'm going to build a studio. I want you to come with me. So I went with him.
Okay. So he builds this studio. He takes you over there. Are you, starting as the chief engineer?
Yeah.
Okay. So
no. How about starting as the only engineer?
the chief and only engineer
Right.
at the original Hit Factory.
I'm the best engineer and the worst engineer they got.
The only option you got.
That's it.
So, Hit Factory was a one-room facility then at that
Yes,
point,
at that
correct?
time, yeah, the first one was.
And how long before it expanded?
He built, the first one was on the 3rd floor of 701 7th Avenue, 3rd floor above a strip club. And he built the second one on West 48th Street, it was right around when I did BB.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been 69, I think.
Okay.
Because I did all the rhythm tracks at the original Hit Factory, and I remember doing the string overdub on The Thrill Is Gone at the new. So it was right around that 68, 69 probably.
Okay. And by that time, you had already transitioned into being a staff producer over at ABC.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So, when you became a staff producer, you still decided to go and work out of the Hit Factory.
Yeah. Well, I knew the room.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did that, Did you have a problem getting in, or could you pretty much make your own hours at that
No,
point?
the assistant that I had near the end of my tenure there, Joe Zagarino, was now the only engineer. And but I still would freelance. I'd come in and, and he would assist me. He'd go back down to the second chair and I would come in and do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what kind of console did you have there?
That was another custom, one of a kind. No, I think 10 in, and that's about it.
Wow.
Couple limiters.
Do you remember what limiters?
The gray, the gray version of before the LA. It was the LA2. Mm-hmm. It was like boxy, about like yay.
Yep.
And I think 2 of those. And that's about it.
Okay. And were you throwing everything through them, drums, or when?
No, not necessarily. I didn't use compressors early on, hardly at all.
Okay.
On the vocal.
Yep.
More than anything on a vocal.
And when you were done with the mix, would you compress the mix back then?
In mastering.
Okay, but not.
No, I wouldn't mix through it. No.
Yep, not at Regent.
No.
Okay.
That didn't start till quite a bit later.
Okay. Amazing. So you're at the Hit Factory. You're a staff producer for ABC Records, and you have a wonderful artist in there, B.B. King.
Right.
And you asked for this job, correct?
Yes, indeed. I hounded him.
Okay.
Hounded him.
And how'd that go down?
You can't do that. Well, why can't I? Well, you're white and you're too young. I said, well, so what difference does that make? And they finally said, okay, we'll set up a meeting with B, and if B likes it, then we'll let you do it. So I pitched my idea to him, which was a mixed band, R&B bottom, drums and bass, and rock and roll guitar and keyboards on top. And he liked the idea. He thought that was interesting, but he didn't want to fully commit to it the first album that we did together. So he said, let's do half the album with my band, my road band, and half your way. So we went down to the Village Gate and recorded his band, and that was the first A-side of the album. And the B-side was all my guys. And the one of the tracks was Why I Sing the Blues, which was a driving do 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 do. So I had that solid R&B with some great, second guitar stuff and keyboard stuff on top. And it was B's first time on the pop charts.
Amazing.
It was like top 10 R&B and maybe up to 70 some on the pop charts. And it was like, he was like, next album was, let's do it all your way. And that was The Thrill Is Gone.
Okay, so you were awarded some freedom, not only with the label, I'm assuming, but also the artist,
Right.
Said, do what you're doing, man.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Okay. So,
and The Thrill Is Gone got him off the Chitlin circuit and got me, props as a big time producer.
Thrill Is Gone comes out, and it's a hit.
Right.
So from there, I'm assuming the phone starts ringing, right?
Not really, because I'm staff producer.
Okay.
I can't do outside work.
But even within the label, that isn't what happened,
Well,
right?
what happened was they said, oh, maybe you do know what you're doing, and if you want to sign a band, because I told them I wanted to sign a rock band, and they said, okay, now you've proved your point, you can sign a rock band, and that was the James Gang.
Okay, and you were telling me that you went out to Ohio
Right.
to see a bunch of artists, based on the recommendation of a friend.
I found Michael Stanley on that trip. There's about 2 or 3 different trips of listening, and I found a band called The Bold out of Massachusetts. I made a record with them. It didn't do much, but Michael Stanley was in a band called the Tree Stumps, which I turned their name into Silk.
Okay.
And they got on their album got on the charts for 2 weeks. They got up to 191 and then fell off. But Michael and I became very good friends over the years, actually to the point of best friends over the years. And so I found him, found my best friend, and I found the James Gang. And the rest is history.
Okay, so those first couple James Gang records, where were those made?
New York.
They were made at
Hit Factory.
Okay.
The first one, your album, was made totally at the Hit Factory, but I think I mixed it at Regent because he had more gear.
Really?
Yeah, there's a couple more toys. I forget exactly, and I also liked the Echo. There was a live room that was killer.
Okay, just dedicated for the Echo?
Yeah.
Yep.
A live room, a live echo chamber. And Rides Again was started at the Hit Factory, and then we went to the record plant for some, and then we finished it out in LA at the record plant.
Okay.
So that was when I first moved out there.
So, you bring up the record. This is where we start intersecting with the record plant for the first time.
Right.
And, if we go back to Dick Charles, right? Or was it Regent where you met Gary?
No. It was Dick Charles.
Yep.
Gary Kellgren had gotten out of the Air Force, and he was on his way to Europe to write the great American novel. That was his dream. Like mine was to go to school and we both got waylaid. And he beat me to Dick Charles by about 3 months, and we became great friends. And later on, I became, what I did, I became a producer. He became a studio designer and owner of all the record plants.
Yep. So he started the record plant out in New York, correct?
Yeah.
How long before the record plant Los Angeles was open?
Oh, maybe. He opened the record plant in New York the same time we opened the Hit Factory. So that would have been 68. And the LA one was done in 70.
Okay. Amazing.
That's when I moved to LA.
Yes.
And that's where I started working there.
Okay. And so your stint as far as living in LA was actually a relatively short time period, correct?
Yeah, 13 months.
And what caused you to leave?
The earthquake.
Okay. So
6.1, 6.3 earthquake.
And it happened in the middle of the night?
6:01 in the morning.
Okay.
And 10 days later, me and my family lived in Denver, Colorado.
Amazing.
Here's a story for you.
Yeah.
I moved. The earthquake happened in February. It was early, maybe February 8th, 9th, or something like that. The Grammys were on a week later. I'm sitting in a hotel room with a black and white TV watching the Grammys, and BB wins R&B Record of the Year for The Thrill Is Gone.
Amazing.
And I'm not working. I'm newly independent. And it was like, did I fuck up?
Well, I mean, as a newly independent freelance producer, having a Grammy win going into the market, that had to have been great, right?
It did work out pretty good.
Yep. So as you went independent then, you have relocated to Denver. How'd you start working out there? Did you go straight into recording?
Well, I moved there with another guy that quit ABC at the same time for the same reason as I did, Larry Ray, and he was in promotion. He was the head of promotion for ABC at the time, and our idea was to start our own label. So we started a label called Tumbleweed, and we got financed by Gulf and Western, who was throwing money around like drunken sailors, and they threw $1 million at us, and we were very happy to spend it. And we signed 4 or 5 acts from around Colorado.
Okay.
And had very little success. But in the meantime, Jerry Greenberg from Atlantic Records came by and offered me the J. Giles Band. And so that was the first independent production of any significance and success. And I did about 6, 7 albums with them over the years.
Absolutely. So, when working with the J. Giles Band, did that start at Caribou or was that at a different studio?
No, that started in New York.
Oh, so you were just in Denver and you went to Record Plant or Hit Factory?
Right. Hit Factory. First 2 albums I did with them were at the Hit Factory. And then for some reason, maybe I couldn't get in, and we went to the Record Plant in New York. And everything I did with them was in New York.
And the Colorado bands, were you recording those locally or were you taking them?
LA.
Yep.
Yeah, New York.
Okay, so these were, let's get out of town, go make some record projects.
Yeah, most of the time in LA at the Record Plant.
Okay, so how did you end up at Caribou Ranch with Jim and Joe? When did that start?
That would be 72. We heard rumors that Jim Guercio was building a studio on this ranch, which happened to be 3 miles from where Joe Walsh's house was up in Nederland, Colorado. So we went to visit him, and I was very aware of what he'd done with Chicago and the Buckinghams and stuff like that. And we went to visit him, and the studio was almost done. It was on the second floor of the barn, The first floor was still dirt floors, stalls were still there, no bathroom, and he didn't have a board yet. But the carpentry was all done, and the piano from Steinway from Columbia Studio A was there. That had been given to him by the bigwigs at Columbia for all the money that he made them as a staff producer, and so everything was there but a board. And he said, well, I'm investing in this board called Olive that is going to be the next big thing. He said, but it's not going to be ready for a while, and I'm going to go off and make this movie, Electroglide in Blue, with Robert Blake. And we said, but wait, can we use it? And he goes, oh, okay, well, if you want. He said, there won't be any help here, and ain't going to nobody be here but you guys. And he rented us a 400 MCI board, 16-track 3M isoloop tape machine, a couple pieces of gear, and he left, and we made Barnstorm.
Very cool. So was that the first time you came across an MCI console?
Yes. Yeah, that would have been the first time.
That's awesome.
I never thought about that, but that's right.
Yeah, so that
it was the old blackface 400 series
with the API faders.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
round red knobs.
Yep.
Yeah.
and it's wild because most people don't realize that there was an MCI ever at Caribou. For a lot of people, it starts with the Olive, and then the Olive was quickly replaced. Correctly.
Quickly replaced.
So did you do
with a Neve?
Did you do any work on it?
No.
Okay.
No. All I did was see parts downstairs. There would be parts in various rooms, and I heard all the horror stories. That well, I did like 2 Joe Walsh albums there, Barnstorm and Smoke You Drink. I did the Rick Derringer album there. I mixed a couple 3 things there, and then by then Jimmy was done with his movie, and he came back and he booked the studio, and I couldn't get in anymore, so I'm back on a plane going to LA or New York or San Francisco or wherever. Okay,
and then from there you end up down south in Miami, correct?
Right.
And so how do you end up at Criteria?
I said, I gotta go to a place where there's a studio. I'm tired of getting on planes. I said, I just must move to a place that's studio. And I didn't want to go back to New York, didn't like the weather. Same with Chicago, didn't like that. And anything on the West Coast, because of the earthquake, that was right out. So, I knew Tom Dowd from Miami, from New York from years earlier. So I called him and I said, what are you doing? What's it like? He said, come on down. We're going to have fun. We're going to get a boat. We're going fishing. None of that ever happened. But I did move to Miami and started working at Criteria.
Okay, so the first time you walked in Criteria and you saw the MCI that was installed there.
I saw it.
So you walk into Criteria and the first time you see the MCI that's installed there, how'd that go?
I walked in and I saw that. Of course, not quite laid out that way. It was long and singular.
Yeah.
One long channel strip. But it was the most interesting channel strip I'd seen because the faders were curved, and it was like, oh, this is like England, because a lot of those things at EMI where there was, curved faders. I thought, well, that's cool. And the only thing was, it was a one-of-a-kind board, very experimental, but it only had 16 tracks. And I told Mac Emmerman, the owner, I said, if you bump this to 24, I said, I'll book this studio out constantly. And I did.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you start your relationship with Criteria and you decide to move to Miami, right?
Right.
And how long are you working at Criteria before you decide to make a change and build Bayshore?
Well, what producer doesn't want his own studio? We all want our own studio.
Absolutely.
And when one of these nights hit, it was like, oh, I can afford to do that now.
Yes.
So that basically that was the horse that was,
So besides, the Eagles record, did you make any other projects at Criteria?
Oh, yeah. The first one I did was a Wishbone Ash album.
Oh, really?
Called There's the Rub.
Okay.
And I did that. I did 2 Michael Stanley Band albums there. I did Elvin Bishop's album with Fooled Around and Fell in Love there.
That was done at Criteria.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just listening to it
Studio
yesterday.
C. I have 3 or 4 other things, but that slipped my mind now. But that would have been from 74 to it's just 2 years, 76.
Okay. So you were there for 2 years, pretty much just working constantly then,
Oh,
every
balls
day.
to the wall.
And people are calling the phone, and you decide to, go and build Bayshore.
Right.
And when you built Bayshore, you continued to buy another MCI console.
Right.
So was that just a natural progression for you?
It was, in the sense that I knew that they were working on this 500, and I had put some input in. All of us at Criteria, Tom Dowd, me, Howie, and Ronnie Albert, Carl Richardson, all the engineer types that were there, gave input to the engineers up at MCI, and they were in Fort Lauderdale, so they were just right up the road. I mean, that was also the calling card. Your parts and service are right there.
Yes.
They're not in England or here or whatever. So it was just a natural, turn of events.
And were they good? Did they typically come over to the studio if you had any problems?
Oh yeah, they were fabulous.
That's really awesome to hear.
Yeah.
So what I mean, clearly Miami and Criteria and Tom Dowd drew you to finding the
Correct.
MCI, but you had been working on one previously, and you clearly did not see the need for a change when you went to Bayshore. So I'm just curious about, what did you love and what attracted you to that sound?
I think it was more that, like I said, a bunch of us had input into how we wanted it laid out and how we wanted certain things, and how we wanted it to look and how we wanted it, were just parts of it, different input that we all had. So I felt kind of attached to it to begin with.
Yes.
Because I got, I think, like the 4th or 5th one.
Really?
Of the 500 series, yeah.
Okay.
And it was like, oh boy, and that was a great board. It had automation, which really never worked.
Did you try to make it work?
We tried, yeah, and after a while, it was just frustrating.
Okay.
Yeah, it would frustrate me during a mix, and I'd blow it all off, and then you'd have to start again.
So the majority of your work that you did, it was not automated.
No, very, very, very little.
I mean, that's absolutely amazing.
Even when I went and would work on Neves, which had nice automation, I started using it maybe in the 90s when I was working at a place called Reflection in Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had a Neve they had a Sony. They had a Sony first, and then they had a Neve.
And you started using the automation then.
Yeah.
But back when you were doing all these seminal records down in Miami, were you trying to do mixes in full passes, or were you trying to do mixes where you would be splicing stuff together?
Full pass.
Full passes.
All at once.
Okay, and that is something that I think is really lost on people nowadays. It was almost
There's a lot of things that are lost on people nowadays.
Absolutely.
And they're basic things. It's basic recording that is ignored nowadays. And the whole builder record thing is like, put 5 people in a room, please. Have them play together. It's so much better. I mean, yeah, here I am down here, build a record. That's the only thing I can do down here, really. But like you say, there's a lot lost.
There's a lot of deferred decision-making process that put off, but there's also deferred results. You don't really know what you have.
Right.
And when you say that you recorded The Thrill Is Gone with BB live in the room, doing vocals with the band,
right.
and the only thing that's recorded are the strings as
that was
an
the only
overdub.
overdub, yeah.
When you sit there and you listen to that master tape without the strings on it, it had to still felt great.
Of course.
And it was instantaneous, right?
Yeah.
So how many takes for a song like that did you go through?
I don't think we did more than a half a dozen. Pros at work.
And was it one of those ones where you did, half a dozen and you said, I like take 2 best, or you just ran them?
Well, that actual song was the last track we cut of maybe 3 or 4 tracks at night. And I remember everybody left, and it was 11-ish or so when we quit. And I was listening by myself to all the takes. And in that process, about 2 in the morning, I went, oh, strings on here would be fucking fantastic. And I literally called BB up at his hotel at 2, 3 in the morning. And I said, B, I got a great idea. I want to put strings on The Thrill Is Gone. And there was about an 8-second pause. And he goes, that sounds interesting. Now I'm going back to bed. Boom. And a week or 10 days later, I had him up to the studio to watch, you know, the overdub of the strings. And I'm at the board and the string section out there, and he's sitting off on the side. And then when the first rundown, before we even, you know, hit record, I look over at him and he's going, I knew I won, you know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So who did you bring in to arrange those strings?
Bert Dicato.
Okay.
He was a guy that I'd used all the time in New York.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how many takes do you think that you did?
3 or 4.
Okay. And, you know, did you go back and find one that was your favorite, or was it?
No. It was like, I think whatever the 3rd or 4th take was, I said, that's it. Thanks.
Perfect.
Done.
Okay. So, and I'm assuming that you were probably in there for less than an hour.
About an hour.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man. And that's incredible because nowadays I feel like there's people who, you know, they don't believe that a hit could come out of a couple hours worth of recording time.
Right.
And that, if you had the right people in the right room with the right person, you know.
My motto all my career has been hire the pros and get out of the way.
Hey, I think that that's a pretty good motto.
Yep. Works for me.
So, you know, you walk into Criteria for the first time and you see this console. You had a history of working on custom consoles. Did this thing feel new and exciting to you at that time?
It did indeed. It felt very new-ish.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, that's not, you know, some thrown together rotary fader, you know, mishmash.
Yes.
It looked interesting. And the coolest thing ever about this console was how to select what channel it's going to.
And that was my next set. You literally followed me into my next segue. So there was a very interesting thing that most people don't even attribute to you or know that you did. But, you know, in my opinion, you invented, you know, what I would consider modern multi-track comping.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was
because of that. Well, it isn't on there.
Yep.
But there was a grid of these micro-fast relays that were just extremely fast. And I could put 4 vocal takes up right next to each other, and I could go between syllables and did it, you know, and got in the Eagles when they first, they went, well, we can really, you know, nitpick now. And they just nitpick the hell out of stuff. For instance, Lion Eyes. City Girls just seem to find out early. That's the first line of the song. That's 6 different takes from 4 different days on the vocal.
Do you remember how the syllables were split up?
City is 2 different takes.
Okay.
Girls, I think, was 1. And after that, I forgot.
No, but I mean, that's amazing. And, you know, you were doing that in, you know, not real time with the band, but in real time as the tape is running.
Yes.
You were literally playing the console like an instrument to pick your favorite takes for those vocal tracks.
Correct. Right.
I think that is just absolutely incredible. How long did you spend with the console before you started doing that?
Within minutes.
Really?
Yeah.
So you sat down at the desk, you saw those funky bus routing switches, which most people don't know out there. Those are actually made with a pin. So that's literally a sewing pin that goes down, and the top of the pin head is what you're touching there.
Right, yeah.
And you sat down at the desk, saw that, and you...
Well, I just by accident found out, oh, these are fast as hell. You know, well, wait, I know how we can do this, you know, and it didn't take long. Probably that Wishbone Ash album.
Really?
Might have, you know, the first one, because it was the first time I'd ever seen that.
Yep.
And I never saw it again afterwards.
No. I've never seen anything like it either. And it was clearly, you know, them pushing the bounds of what they were trying to accomplish. Very, very cool that you were able to just instantly turn that into something new.
Yeah.
And when you went to the 528 afterwards, was that something that you missed, or did you
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yeah, I did miss it. And I remember during the design phase of the 500, and I think I mentioned something about that. Well, how am I going to get my fast relays? You know, and there was, I don't even remember what the answer was, but it was like, well, not in the frame that we're doing, and yada yada, and double talk, and it went bye bye.
Yeah, because as far as all of the 528 module stuff, the busing and everything was part of the individual channel strips.
Right.
Where in that console, the individual channel strips were separate of those matrices.
Right. Yeah.
Very, very incredible. So did you ever have a need to go back and be able to comp like that, or did you figure out other ways to get around?
I figured out other ways to do it.
Mostly with the mutes and stuff?
Yeah, mutes.
Yep.
Yeah, or if it's really tight, punching it in on the machine itself.
Oh, really?
Sometimes that'd be a little bit quicker if you're trying to get something right in a real tight space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can have it up and do the first part of the line, have that recorded, put up the next part that you want. When that comes up, hit record.
Wild. So how much time do you think that you'd spend comping a vocal on the MCI back then?
On this board?
Yeah, on this one.
It would depend on how many nits we're going to pick that day. And I mean, other than the Eagles, it would be fairly quick.
Yes.
But with Don and Glenn, it was arduous. It was long, and sometimes to the point of, let me hear 4 again, let me hear 3 again, let me hear 4 again, let me hear 3 again. It was like that over and over.
Wild.
And it was almost hypnotic.
So the first time that you played back Hotel California with the vocals comped, and you decide to sit down and mix it, you say, this is what's going to mix. Was there anything about the desk that you were excited about to be able to utilize on a mix like that? Or really in any record, I guess, was there something about the mixing side of the console that drew you to it and kept you there?
No, not really.
Okay.
No, it was when you get to the mix, it's everything is there. Here it is, and make it as best as you possibly can, if however long it takes.
Yep.
It will, and it wasn't. I mean, yeah, every studio's got their toys, and every board has their idiosyncrasies and or toys.
Yes.
And you use whatever you have.
Yes. Well, this has an interesting feature that you didn't really utilize too much, right?
The noise gate?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think it really worked. I never used them.
Yeah. And, for the time period of when a lot of people were inventing noise gates and stuff like that, you tended to shy away from them in general, right?
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even to this day, you've got a drummer down here that, your son said you were utilizing for toms,
Yeah.
but your kicks and snares, they're just rocking wide open.
Very seldom do I, yeah, they just open up, just calm down the tom ring.
Yep.
That's it.
And back then, were you typically doing that with a lot of deadening then?
Mostly deadening, yeah.
Yep.
At that point, yeah. And that in those days, dead rooms were the norm.
Yes.
There was a lot orange carpet.
Yes.
Criteria, god awful orange carpet. But all of them were, were pretty much dead rooms. And it wasn't until a little bit later on, I would say maybe mid '80s, when live rooms were, once everybody heard the drum fill in the air tonight, game over. Then it was, I need a live room.
Yes. So, when you are at Criteria and Bayshore, your toolkit, nowadays everybody has 7,000 plugins and a bunch of stuff to
Right.
choose from, but you really had your consoles, a couple limiters, a couple of outboard pieces of gear, such as your Cooper Time Cube,
Right.
and
Some DDLs.
yeah, some digital delay
Right.
lines, an EMT maybe.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had 2 EMTs at Bayshore.
Okay, did you tend to keep one long, one short?
Pretty much.
Okay.
That was the deal. Yep. You
Yep.
got it. It
And
was like 1.5 and 3
okay.
or something like that.
And so that was pretty much it. So, were you utilizing things like the EMT on your snare drum at that time?
I
Or?
did that, or I'd do tape delay send to a chamber.
Okay.
So, like for instance on Rocky Mountain Way, the snare is a, that's that sound. It's tape delayed EMT.
Okay, into an EMT.
Right.
So when you were up at Criteria or at Caribou, there wasn't a lot of stuff there either, right?
No, but
Yep.
he did have. I think he had 2. I know he had 1 EMT. I think he had 2 also.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the dual EMT was definitely a thing.
Oh, that was a thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the sound.
And you had 2 over at Criteria as well?
No. Oh no, we had a EMT and a live chamber.
Okay.
A dedicated live chamber.
But
that was a chamber that you had to book the chamber because all 3 studios could use it.
yes.
And so I need the chamber for Tuesday.
Was there ever a problem trying to get the chamber?
No, sometimes you'd have to rebook.
Yep.
If you're mixing something and you really want it. And we all got along, but sometimes we'd argue about, no, I got to get this mix done by tomorrow. Well, so do I.
And back then, how long do you think that you typically spend on a mix?
A day.
A day.
That would usually be it.
Okay, and you were rocking, JBL 4311s?
4311s, and then we went to 12s.
Okay.
4312s.
Did you do a car test, or did you have a transistor radio that you like to listen to it on?
I would do, we had those awful tones.
Oh, Oratones.
Oratones, awful tones.
Yep.
That would really tell you what you got.
Okay. So were those,
And Criteria also had a transmitter that we could do it out to our car radio.
Yeah, that's why I brought up the transistor radio.
Right,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. So did they when you went to the Oratones, was that something that you would switch back and forth through often, or was that the end of the mix double check? End of the mix double check.
Yeah. I would mix at very low levels. Not very low, but low. Mm-hmm. And for mixing. Recording is like balls to the wall. Let's go. Get excited. But mixing, it would be very low levels, and then when I got a mix that I thought I liked, I'd turn it up and double check everything, and then I'd put it on the awful tones and see what I had really had with no bottom.
So did you the MCI either at Bayshore or at Caribou or at Criteria? Do you ever remember them giving you any shit? Were they pretty reliable for you?
The consoles were pretty good. The consoles were great. The tape machine, for a little period there, went through a period where we called MCI Master Crunchers Inc.
Okay.
And it would eat a tape every now and then.
Ooh.
And I don't remember how they fixed it, but they eventually got it right, But there was a time there where the tape machines would eat it. But the boards were always great.
Did you ever lose a tape that you really didn't want to lose? I mean, of course, I know we don't want to lose all of them, but
right.
Is there any that?
I think a couple of times, yeah. And it would eat a section, and I'd have to either go refine that in a different take, and lop it in, or whatever, to rescue.
And that was something that we were speaking about earlier, but you had no problem pulling out a razor blade and cutting tapes up.
No, not at all. It was fun. Hotel California, the single, the 6.5 minute song, has 33 edits in the 2-inch tape.
That's absolutely incredible. And we spoke about this again, but just to reiterate, you only had one issue where a splice actually popped, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was on the long run when we were working these tapes to death.
Yes.
Overdubs. And I was overdubbing something, and it got to a certain point, and then the tape automatically stopped. I rewind and run it, and it stopped again, same spot. What the hell? And I look over, and there's an edit there. And I look at the edit, and there's about maybe 1/8 of an inch space where the tape is. Yep. And the light sensor sees through it, turns off.
So you were just seeing leader tape pretty much holding that thing together.
Right.
Wild.
And so I had to send everybody home for 3 days and re-edit, not change the edits, but re-tape resplice all the splices, and believe me, there was a ton of them. And you got to be real careful. You got to peel it off and not fuck up the tape, and it's fun.
So did you ever believe that sticky shed was a problem back then?
For 456,
Okay.
Ampex 456, that was the only one.
What was your preferred format then?
We were all using Ampex.
So the tapes that you used were the ones that were shedding?
Yeah, they were.
Did you ever
well,
try?
Then everybody panicked, and I think went to 3M, and
I was just gonna say.
And what was the German one?
AFGA?
BASF.
Oh yeah.
There was
Yep.
some of that around. Yeah, and then 456 was notorious.
Wild.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was the technical engineer on Frankenstein, Edgar Winter's Frankenstein. Rick Derringer was the producer.
Mm-hmm.
But on that cut, Frankenstein, I edited for like 3 days. The original cut was, I think, 17 minutes long, because it was a long instrumental that gave Edgar an opportunity to play every instrument that he played, which was just a ton.
Mm-hmm.
And to get it down to the album, I think I cut it from, it was maybe 11 or 12, and I cut it down to 7. And then it started to get play, after the record came out, and they wanted a single. So I had to go in again and cut it down to whatever it was, 3.5, 4 minutes or something like that. But during the initial from 17 or something down to 7 or 8 or whatever, I'd have to go back and look. The drummer was sitting there, and it's just like, and he goes, "Man, that's like Frankenstein," and that's where the name of the song came from. Up until then, it had been the warm-up number.
Wild. So that song is named after your ability to tape edit well.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's
and how many splices were in it?
That's awesome.
Edgar loved it.
So
Frankenstein, that's it.
So when you were managing all these tape edits, do you remember having,
Oh God, yeah,
tape
hanging from everywhere.
Yep, hanging from the ceiling.
All over the place. You'd hang them from light fixtures. You'd hang them from around your neck. You'd be over on this and put it on another machine.
Amazing.
Like, I got my bridge over here. My second verse is over there.
Did you ever edit a tape together to find that you had the edit backwards?
Yep. Oh yeah. Yep. Whoops, I forgot that was that and that was that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, take it apart, put it together.
Clearly you were making records in a time period where records were made fast.
Yeah.
But then you transitioned into a time period where things slowed down a little bit, and people were spending more and more time on the studio.
Right.
How did that feel? Did that feel like you finally had all of this time and ability to explore to your heart's content, or did that feel frustrating in the sense that some of this stuff should be easier to accomplish?
It's a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of, well, you have an unlimited budget, like with the Eagles. You can, you're spending your own money when you're making records.
Yes.
Your record company pays for it, but they're going to take it out of your royalty check. So you're spending your own money, and you can waste more time. And to me, a lot of it was like, why did we do that? In retrospect.
Totally understood. So, did you travel with your own stuff when you would go and work with those dudes? Did you take your own microphones?
Some.
Okay.
A few. And like, for instance, I was telling you about going to Michael Stanley's house and mixing his albums up at his place. I'd load my car up. I mean, I'd take the time cube even.
Yep.
And my own speakers. I mean, I'd take these guys,
Yep.
And the car would be full, and I'd plug it all into his place.
That's cool.
And it was great.
And his spot's in Ohio?
He was in Ohio, yeah.
And what kind
Cleveland.
of console did he have up there?
He had, oh hell, what was it? God, it's been so long it's been like 5 years since I looked at it. I forget. It was it was pretty stock, standard 24 in, 8 out.
But it worked for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I think is so interesting is that clearly you had a couple things that the Cooper Time Cube, for example.
Right.
It was in Colorado.
Oh, I first found it in the Hit Factory in New York.
You found it at the
Yeah,
Hit Factory?
Jerry Ragavoy bought one, and I immediately fell in love with it.
Really?
Oh yeah, I plugged it in once and went, oh, that's that John Lennon sound. Boom, there you go.
Okay. So before the Cooper Time Cube, were you using a tape machine to make tape delays, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just, I mean, clearly easier than that, right?
Well, for 80 millisecond, yeah. But if I mean with tape delay, you could vary speed it. With the time cube was fixed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you were mixing things like, Wishbone Ash and the Eagles down at, Criteria later on the MCI, were you also using a, tape machine for tape delay typically?
Yes.
Okay.
I would a lot of times tape delay the send to an EMT.
Okay.
And so that you'd have that sound.
And you're talking about on snare drum or vocals?
Oh, anything,
Yep.
anything and if it fit, it fit.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And, when you would set up the dual EMT rig that you had going for a while, did you tend to dedicate an EMT towards one thing, or was it just overall the vibe? Like if I want a little bit of reverb that's shorter, goes here, or longer?
That's it. You'd set up the two of them up, short and long.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
then what do you need where? Where's the wash and where's the tight?
So do you remember doing things like automating the sends? I mean, I know we're not talking about automation, but, okay, verses are going to have some short EMT, and then we're going to the chorus and it's getting big EMT too, as, you were doing these mixes and they were going down?
No, I wouldn't be automated, but
Well-
I might change it.
Yeah, I mean, not automated, but,
Yeah.
changing.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah, a lot of times.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah. And turning the echo on and off, too.
Yes.
Like the at the end of, or the middle of Hotel California, the echo sucks down and it's gone and,
Yes.
and slowly builds back up as the next portion goes.
Did you do that with the faders?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, you just turn it off and then pull the faders down, turn it back on, and then slowly ride it back up during the next verse.
So you just hard cut it,
Yeah.
pulled them down,
Uh-huh.
and then
Ease them back in.
amazing. And so when you were going to prepare to lay down these mixes, were you, was there tape everywhere? Did you have a piece of paper where you wrote this out? Or did you just know what you wanted to do?
No, I mean, it was a white grease pencil.
White grease pencil.
Yeah, all over the board.
And I see one sitting up there right now.
You don't leave home without it.
Okay. Amazing.